You know, people say every man has his price, that if you stack enough green high enough, eventually anyone will fold, but they're wrong. There's one thing in this world that doesn't have a barcode, and that's the soul of a child. My name is Kaylin. I'm a paralegal, a coffee addict, and for the last 7 years I've been a solo mom to the coolest kid I know, Caspian. We weren't bawling, but we were happy. Then the Vandermeers showed up. They didn't come with weapons or threats. They came with silk sheets, private jets, and the terrifying belief that my son was a luxury item they could just add to their collection. This isn't just a story about a disagreement. It's about the time I had to go to war with a billion-dollar empire to prove that my son's love isn't something you can buy at an auction. Strap in because things are about to get heavy. It all started at the start of 2nd grade. Caspian came home talking about this new kid, Zephyr. Now, with a name like Zephyr, you already know the kid's parents probably own a vineyard or a small country. Caspian and Zephyr were like peas in a pod, two neurodivergent kids who obsessed over vintage Lego sets and obscure marine biology facts. I was stoked. Caspian struggled to make friends, so seeing him light up was everything. Then came the first playdate. I pulled my beat-up Honda into a driveway that felt longer than my entire street. The Vandermeer estate was basically a fortress of glass and limestone. I met the parents, Alistair and Serafina. They looked like they'd been airbrushed by God himself. They were old money polite, the kind of polite that feels like a cold breeze. "Kaylin, darling," Serafina said, sipping something that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Caspian is a delight. Zephyr has never been so animated. We simply must have him over more often." At first, it was awesome. They'd send a black car to pick him up. They invited him to 5-star resorts. I felt a twinge of guilt. I couldn't give him those things, but Caspian was happy. But then the gifts started. It wasn't just a toy here or there. It was a $2,000 iMac for his studies. It was a wardrobe of designer clothes because Caspian needs to look the part when he's with us. I tried to push back. "Alistair, it's too much," I told him one evening. He just waved a manicured hand. "Nonsense, Kaylin. Think of the opportunities. You want what's best for him, don't you?" That was the first time I felt it. That little shiver down my spine. The way he said what's best didn't sound like a suggestion. It sounded like a verdict. By mid-semester, the Vandermeers were a permanent fixture in our lives, but not in a good way. They started undermining my rules. I'd tell Caspian no sugar before bed. They'd send him home with a bag of gourmet chocolates. I'd set a curfew. They'd call me, sounding offended, saying they were right in the middle of a private stargazing session with a NASA consultant, and it would be cruel to pull him away. The worst part, they started talking to Caspian like I was a temporary hurdle. One night, Caspian came home and asked, "Mom, why don't we have a chef? Serafina says you're too busy to cook real food and that I'm becoming malnourished." I felt like I'd been slapped. I worked 50 hours a week to keep organic fruit in the fridge. "Caspian, I cook for you every night. Do you feel malnourished?" He looked down at his shoes. "No, but Alistair said that if I lived there, I could have a tutor for every subject and I'd be a CEO by 20. He said you're holding me back because of your financial limitations." The slang for it is love bombing, but this was more like wealth bombing. They were trying to buy his loyalty by making his real life look gray and pathetic compared to their neon-lit world. Then came the Thanksgiving invite. "We're taking the Gulfstream to the Maldives," Serafina chirped over the phone. "We've already cleared a seat for Caspian. It'll be such an education for him." "He's spending Thanksgiving with me and his grandmother," I said firmly. The silence on the other end was icy. "Kaylin, don't be selfish. You're choosing a dusty turkey dinner over a world-class cultural experience. Is that really what a good mother does?" I hung up, shaking. They weren't helping me. They were trying to outbid me for my own son. Things went from creepy to horror movie in December. I was invited to the estate for tea. I thought it was a peace offering. Instead, I walked into a room with their family lawyer. Alistair didn't mince words. "Kaylin, let's be realists. You're struggling. You're one car breakdown away from a crisis. Caspian has genius-level potential and frankly, you can't afford him." "Excuse me," I gasped. Serafina leaned in, her eyes devoid of any actual warmth. "We want to propose a formal guardianship. Caspian would live with us during the week, attend the academy we've chosen, and we would handle all expenses. We'd even provide you with a generous monthly consultation fee for your cooperation." "You're trying to buy my son," I whispered. "We're trying to invest in his future," Alistair corrected. "And if you refuse, we'll have to wonder if a mother who denies her child such a life is actually fit to make decisions for him." It was a threat, plain and simple. I walked out of there so fast I left my coat. 2 days later, I went to pick Caspian up from school. His teacher, Miss Aris, looked confused. "Oh, Kaylin, the Vandermeer's driver came by an hour ago. He said you had an emergency and they were taking Caspian to their house." My heart stopped. I hadn't authorized that. I called Alistair. He didn't answer. I called the police, my voice cracking as I told the dispatcher that my son had been taken. When the cops and I showed up at the Vandermeer gate, Alistair acted like I was the one who was crazy. Officer, it was a simple misunderstanding. We thought we were doing her a favor. Look at the boy, is he not happy? Caspian looked terrified, caught between the people who gave him everything and the mother who looked like she was falling apart. That night I sat him down. I had to have the talk, not about birds and bees but about the golden cage. Caspian, I said, holding his hands, if anyone, even Zephyr's parents, tells you that you have to go with them or that I said it's okay when we didn't talk about it, you run to a teacher. You scream, you don't let their money make you think you're their property. The Vandermeers didn't stop. They filed for emergency temporary guardianship, claiming I was emotionally unstable and financially incapable of providing a safe environment. They used the fact that I'd called the police as evidence that I was high-strung and prone to outbursts. I was drowning in legal fees, working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, but they forgot one thing: I'm a paralegal. I know how to find the dirt. I started digging into the Vandermeers' philanthropy. It turns out they had a habit of sponsoring kids from lower-income backgrounds, only to discard them when they weren't grateful enough or didn't fit the image. I found 2 other moms. They were too scared to talk, but I convinced them. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Alistair sat there looking like a king. Serafina looked like a saint. But then my lawyer, a pitbull of a woman I'd met through a pro bono clinic, started playing the recordings. See, I'd started recording every tea and every phone call. The judge heard Alistair calling my son an investment. He heard Serafina calling me a hurdle. And then the school principal stood up. She testified about the aggressive donations the Vandermeers had made to the school, trying to buy Caspian's records and influence his placement. The judge looked at the Vandermeers with pure disgust. Money can buy a lot of things, Mr. Vandermeer, she said, her voice echoing. But in this state it does not buy a child. Petition dismissed, and I am issuing a permanent restraining order. You are to have 0 contact with this child or his mother. As we walked out, Serafina hissed at me, he'll hate you for this, he'll remember the life you took from him. I looked her dead in the eye. No. He'll remember the mother who wouldn't let him be sold. Life went back to normal, if you can call it that. No more black cars, no more private jets, no more $700 Lego sets. We moved to a different district to be safe. A few months later, Caspian was sitting on the floor of our tiny apartment, building a dinosaur out of mismatched hand-me-down blocks. He looked up at me and said, Mom, I miss the IMAX sometimes. My heart sank. I know, baby, I'm sorry I can't, but, he interrupted, I like it better when you're not crying, and I like that our house doesn't feel like a museum. Here I can actually touch the walls. He came over and hugged my knees. In that moment I knew I'd won. The lesson: people with money think they're the main characters in everyone's story. They think the world is a vending machine. But love, real messy, broke as hell love, that's the only thing that's truly bulletproof. Don't let the shine fool you. Gold is heavy, and if you're not careful, it'll bury you alive. Keep your head up and never ever let anyone put a price tag on your heart. Much love, Kaylin.